So hello, hope you can hear me. Yes, hello. Welcome back to this breakout session on legislative approaches for the future of food. I hope you're all fueled with coffee, ready and raring to go, because I have a feeling this will be a fairly lively session. I know it was one of the most demanded sessions today as well. There's clearly a lot of interest in this topic. And I'd like this to be a very interactive panel, dynamic. So don't be shy if you have questions. I'll remind you again that you can put your questions on Slido with the hashtag FutureFood23. So keep that in mind as you're going along. If you have questions for our panelists, be sure to put who the question is for so I can best direct your question. And so, as I said at the beginning, we're coming to the end of the political cycle. It's a pretty pertinent time to take stock of the situation in terms of legislative files, what's been done, what's to come, what's maybe missing, how things are progressing in general. And luckily, we have a very rich and diverse panel to discuss all the facets of this. So I'd like to welcome to the stage, we have Claire Burry today, who is Deputy Director General at DG Sante, the European Commission's DG Sante. I'm going to take a seat as well as I'm introducing. Welcome, Claire. We also have with us today Dirk Jacobs, who's Director General of Food Drink Europe. We have Robert Jones, President of Cellular Agriculture Europe and Head of Public Affairs at Mosa Meat. We also have Monica Andres, who is EVP at Yara. We also have Julia Reido, who is Agriculture and Sustainable Food Policy Officer at the WWF European Office. Welcome, Julia. And last but not least, we have Maya Itkonen, who is CEO and co-founder of Onego Bio, who we'll hear a lot more about in our panel. So nice, as you can see, a nice wide range of voices and perspectives today to get some interesting flavors to our discussion. So I thought we would start with Claire and perhaps maybe get you to set the scene a little bit for us, give us a bit of an update of where we are currently, but really be looking to the future direction in the context of this political environment we're facing next year. How do you see the next year, the priorities, any thoughts you have for the start of the Commission mandate? So some big questions for you there. I have a feeling you're going to be fairly in demand in this panel, so good luck to you. But anyway, yes, let's start with the scene setting.
Okay, thank you very much, Natasha. And it's very nice to be part of this panel today. Some of which we've met over the months and years bilaterally, some on screen and so on, but it's really nice to be part of the panel. I think it's a very timely debate for the reasons that you said, which is we are in the process, of course, now the clock is ticking on various of the files which are pending before the Council and Parliament. We have about another 6 months, 5 months to finish. But at the same time, we need to lift our eyes and get out and listen. And I think, first of all, think about what went right with Farm to Fork and what didn't go so right with Farm to Fork. So obviously that's part of the Commission. We have to examine our consciences on that. But also we have to listen, I think, to hear what others think about where we are, the world, and how we should move forward. So first of all, you said, say a few words about where we are now and what should we be looking for the future. So first of all, I think... Okay, at the beginning of this mandate, nobody would have said that we would have had so many crises, I don't think, no? And in a way, it's a miracle that we've kept the ship more or less stable and still going towards the port in spite of those crises. But I think they've really showed us what the fundamentals are in our food system and that we need to look after those. But at the same time, we know very much that standing still, the status quo, and doing nothing is not an option. And every day when we step out, the climate and the biodiversity degradation reminds us of that. So when Ursula von der Leyen did her State of the Union speech in September, everybody was listening very carefully because of this particular conjuncture. But she did say, you know, we can't stop our level of ambition for the Green Deal. No, we can't stop that. But I think what we have to see now is, you know, how do we take it forward? What do we think are the most important? And how are we going to work together to do that? So progress on sustainability is necessary for scientific reasons. That's obvious. It keeps getting confirmed. It's also, the transition has started. I mean, the one thing that there are a lot of reasons to be pessimistic at the moment, but I think there are some reasons to be pessimistic, which is that we see that there's a change of mindset, I think, about sustainability, both with the farmers in the fields, Last week I was in Latvia talking to them there about pesticides, and the problem in Latvia is that the pesticide trend is going up, not down. So no, they have some real challenges there. But even there, they do recognize that change is needed. It's very clearly happening in the boardrooms. I'm sure Dirk is going to say something about that, no? And the other colleagues who work in business will say something about that. But I think it's also happening with the consumers, including in my fridge now, with the proposals that we've had on food waste, which give me a sense of guilt every day in terms of what's going on. No, but I'm joking a bit, but I mean, it's happening all the way along the sustainable food system. I think it's happening in investments as well. But this, for me, is one of the areas that we need to look at. Dirk and I have been talking a bit about this, and I know that other colleagues in the Commission think it's important too, which is, of course, we have the CAP, which is focused on agriculture and production, but we also need to look about what private financing can do in this area, and I think that's maybe one of the missing pieces of the jigsaw that we haven't looked enough at, and how we can combine the public financing and the private financing. So I'm already now starting to think about the next part. But I think if we have to take an analogy, I was reminded, I went to Copa Cogeca not long after I started in this role and was discussing with the farmers there, and there was a very charming Frenchman, but a bit rugged in the way that French farmers can be, you know. And he said, yes, Madame Bury, oui, Madame Bury, hein? I hear what you're saying, but you know, basically what you're telling me is it's like trying to climb the Mont Blanc in flip-flops. So I thought, yeah, I mean, and this kind of stayed in my mind now. So I think we're halfway up the mountain with our flip-flops on, but the question really is how we're going to get to the top of the mountain, and what shoes are we going to put on? Where do we do the next base camp? How quickly are we going to be able to do it? And what does the weather look like now in terms of how we're going to make progress to the top? So looking now that way forward, what do we need? We need innovation. I mean, this is something that I believe in deeply. It's been a part of a lot of the work that I've done in the Commission, including on the digital side of things before I came to work on food. So we need to innovate. But of course, innovating in the food space is challenging because food is something which is fundamental for mankind, but it's also very personal. But I'm sure that the colleagues who face the day-to-day challenges of how to innovate will tell us more about what they think the challenge is there. Biotech obviously is, I think, the way forward and an area that we have to focus on. But I think social innovation in terms of the way that we do things is also needed. Second thing is engagement and governance. We have to learn, I think, from, how do we do this? We need to take people out of their comfort zone, but we also need to do it together. So how do we combine those two things? How do we make sure that we are making change sufficiently quickly enough, but that we're taking people with us? So how do we do that transition? And then the third area, I think, takes me back to something that you and I discussed a few months ago, which is this question of choices in food. Is there really a choice for consumers? How much is really the way that they react, the nudging that they get in the whole food environment, and what can we do about that going forward at European level? So I've studiously avoided saying anything about legislation.
Very,
but I'm sure you're going to come back to it at some point.
Don't worry, I think we'll come back to that point. But nice try. I think,
okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Claire, for that overview. And like I said, we'll dig into a little bit more of the details as we go on in the discussion. But I thought what we would do to start off with is have a bit of a tour de table. And maybe start with, this is a moment to stake your position and where you come from, what it is that you're doing and your priorities and the flavour that you're bringing to this discussion. And I thought I could center this around what you consider to be the top priority of the next Commission and how you see the first 100 days of the Commission look like. How should policymakers move forward? What are the priorities from your perspective? And then we will come back to dig into more of the details. So Dirk, I will start with you. It's your moment to have your voice heard on how you see the future, the first 100 days in the next Commission.
That's a very big question, but very important one.
Not sure your microphone is on. Try again, maybe now?
Now? Does it work?
No. Nope.
Nothing working?
It is not.
Hello?
No.
Things done.
Otherwise, we will get you. Thank you. That's very kind of you. Yeah. Speaking from experience.
Yeah,
Let's try with this.
Talking about innovation.
Then this one is working. Yes.
There we go.
Yes,
Okay,
I hear.
yes.
You can hear me. Even though I'm Dutch and I have a loud voice, it's not enough to go without a mic, I believe. So, first of all, a big thanks to EIT Food for having us here, and also thank you for the partnership that we're driving together. And particularly, I want to highlight Andy, who has been tremendous in strengthening the relations between the research and innovation community and the food industry. In order to discuss the future, you have to look back a little bit. And that's to say that the European food and drink industry has always been very supportive of the Green Deal and the farm to fork direction. It's not just a nice to have, but a need to have for our sector. If we want to be resilient in 10, 20, 30 years' time, we do need to address those challenges. And in fact, the last years have only been very exemplary of the need to accelerate all of this. If you look at this year's harvests and how that is impacting food production, you can see already that food is probably one of the first sectors to be impacted by climate change, and it's very visible. So if you are thinking about mustard from France, harvest of mustard seeds have gone wrong last year and have had an impact in the availability and the quality and the quantity of mustard that can be processed into mustard seeds that can be processed into mustard. So this is already showing one thing, and of course the energy crisis and the high costs that are involved with that are having a big impact. So I think the food and drink industry is very convinced across the board, from the large companies to the small ones. And there's a lot to be done in that area. So I think we are now moving from the what to the how. And I think first of all, I need to commend the European Commission for starting this road towards a more common food policy, because that was not there before. So the farm to fork strategy and the Green Deal are going into that direction. Yes, more can be done to de-silo and to bring everything even more together in an integrated way. But it's very commendable that the Commission started this. But what has been missing a little bit is the way how we go about this transition. So it's not about questioning the direction and the aspirations or the targets, but as seeing now concretely how can we make that happen. And the challenges are enormous. We're conducting actually at the moment a study that will be released in a month or so that will show that the cost to sustainable agriculture amounts to approximately 38 to 52 billion euros per year, depending on how you calculate, obviously. But that's huge. And why am I saying agriculture? Because most of the greenhouse gas emissions that we're faced with are in the agricultural side. And even though that we have, as a manufacturing industry, managed to reduce our carbon emissions per unit of value added by 21% between 2008 and 2018, there's so much that still needs to be done on the agricultural side that will have an impact on the entire food chain. So this is about, indeed, investment. So can we bring together public and private financing? There's a recent Commission study that showed that there's 60 billion euros of unmet loans for farmers and for the agri-food sector. So it means that there is a problem in access to finance. Farmers are not being able to de-risk the investments and the transition that they need to make. So how are we able, as a food chain, to help them with that? A second point is innovation. We are lagging behind compared to other regions in the world, not so much on the public investment side. So we are quite good as EU in research projects, but how can we translate them into innovation, into market-based solutions? And also there's also a lot of private investment that needs to be matched with the public one. It's also about trade and security of supply, because we have learned from the recent challenges, the geopolitical tensions, the COVID pandemic, that we're quite vulnerable in some aspects when it comes to the security of our ingredients, our raw materials, and so forth. So shouldn't we do a mapping also on that? And then lastly, better regulation and governance. As I said, we're still missing a executive vice president for food that brings everything together, that makes sure that food safety is being taken into account when we discuss packaging, or that looks at shelf life and food waste reduction, while at the same time looking at carbon emission reduction and so forth. So we think that it is now time to have a discussion on equal level between public and private actors to determine what is exactly needed to get to these targets that have already been set in the last couple of years. So happy to discuss a little bit more about that later.
And we will do, yes. Thank you very much for that, Dirk. Monica, let me come to you now. The same question. What do you consider to be your top priorities from your perspective, looking at the first 100 days of this, this handover to the next commission of this next year?
Okay, thank you, Natasha. I'm very glad to be here in this opportunity that, as I agreed on Claire, that is a very convenient time. And the question is very broad.
Yes.
And we have quite a lot of ideas to bring. First, I would say that the sustainability course is to be maintained. This is something that we cannot miss, this opportunity, and miss the momentum that we are in. So I would encourage the new commission to come up with an empowering deal. What does it mean? So I think that it should come with a clear strategy on how the key sectors in the agri-food production, so all stakeholders along the value chain, will be enabled in the ambition, but also to agree and also to achieve the Green Deal targets. But we need to bridge this ambition with concrete actions, and that comes with economic initiatives. So this will be, for me, the first point. On the second, I expected a transformative and innovative approach as well. Innovation has been named by Claire and also Dirk. And everyone in the food chain, agri-food chain, has a solution or a way to support on this. We in fertilizers industry, we are heavily and seriously committed to producing green fertilizers. Green fertilizers, for those that don't know, are the game changer in the production of food. There is no way to decarbonize food. You were saying that it was 21% in 10 years in drinks. It's not possible to reduce and to decarbonize the food production without green fertilizers. What does it mean? What is the green fertilizer? What is this magic wand? It consists of replacing the fossil fuel energy source by renewable energy. With that, we can decarbonize the fertilizers between 80 to 90%, which is fantastic. And with that, we can then guarantee that the food being produced out of the application of this crop nutrition would be reduced between 30 to 40%. So just to bring a concrete data, because sometimes it relies more on the concepts, we have, and it's very concrete, we have an agreement with Lantmännen. Most of you will know it's a cooperative in Sweden. With this contract and commitment that we have, we will supply the green fertilizers to Lantmännen. Lantmännen, they will provide these fertilizers, green fertilizers, inputs to farmers. They will produce wheat. With the wheat, they will produce flour. The flour will be converted baked into bread. And that loaf of bread will have 12% reduced carbon, so CO2 emissions. So this is fantastic, I think. But as I say, it's a nice example of how the whole value chain is to be involved. And so as with the cost as well. That involves heavy investments all along, involving also the end consumers. And you will wonder, what will be the cost of that loaf of bread? So just 5 more cents. So this is important. But this industry needs, and this momentum where we are in this value chain, we need more carrots than sticks. So we need incentives all along the value chain. So the farmers need to know why. on how they are going to get the funding to invest in these new agriculture practices. And then also the consumption, we are clear that the consumption is there because the end consumers are actually demanding this credible but also greener food as well to bring to their tables. So we are in the middle of that momentum. We cannot miss it, and I will expect that from the commissioner. So we have to unlock this decarbonization. The potential is there, the technology is there, and I would like to run away from the trials and the tests. It's already tested. It's now the momentum, the time to look for and seek for scale. And for that, we need encouraged measures. So as you see, the commissioner will have a lot to do and to say.
That is for sure.
The expectations are very high, but so are the targets, right? So we are in Europe, in the world Europe is the front runner on this. So from Yara, we applaud and we support the Green Deal because, also our farmers are the first impacted by the climate change, right? So they are the ones suffering from floods and also drought. Mm-hmm. And in agriculture, we have a say as well in regenerative agriculture and in new practices to gain that or provide the plants with the resilience to keep the yields or even improve them, but not impacting the environment.
Okay, so a strong message there to stay on course with the Green Deal. Thank you very much for that. Robert, let me turn to you now. Same questions. What do you see as, from your perspective, what should be the main priorities going into this next year in this new cycle?
Is my mic working?
No, I don't think it is.
Nope. They're targeting the guys.
Oh, that seems to be working.
What about now?
Yes.
Okay, great.
You're good, I think, yes.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to start off also just first by thanking EIT as well. My company based in the Netherlands, Mosameat, was a EIT Rising Food Star, really saw the value of that partnership, and now we're becoming a strategic partner of EIT. The industry association that I serve as president of Cellular Agriculture Europe represents companies across Europe writ large that are working on creating new innovative proteins, starting at the source of the animal cells themselves. And I bring that up because we see ourselves fitting into the food system as a supplement, as a complement to the existing protein production systems in Europe. So as a result of being very innovative and new and needing approval before we even go to market, we're also very focused on the policy frameworks that are being decided of how we would fit into the future of Europe in the long term. We think generally through the lens of protein diversification, and especially are focused on climate resilience through protein diversification. So we're thrilled to see Europe be the hands-down leader and thought leader with the European Green Deal and the Farm to Fork strategy, even way ahead of the global community. It wasn't even until last year at Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt that food was even talked about at COP27. It took 26 COPs before there was a substantive conversation. So we've hands down been the thought leaders in this space. And I agree with Dirk's assessment. It's not really the what. We know what the what is. It's sort of laid out in a very ambitious goal document. But it's not even just the how at this point. It's the when. I appreciate, Claire, that you are here. I started my political career in campaigns, political campaigns. So more than most, I recognize how political campaigns can create a distraction away from the public policy environment, and really appreciate civil servants who are focused on the long-term objective and the passion of moving public policy forward, and not holding you directly accountable for anything. But I think collectively we're holding our breath right now, hopeful but worried that we're seeing some backtracking on some of the long-term goals. I think all of us in this room are curious about the Sustainable Food Systems Framework, when we might see movement on that. In terms of first 100 next 100-day goals that we're focused on, we feel like that there has been a lack of integration of the idea of protein diversification and complementary proteins throughout some of the implements that we've seen the European Commission pursue. I'll give an example of what I think was a missed opportunity, and that was in the Net Zero Industry Act. No focus on food or agri-food reform there, which puts it into a silo. And I saw in the October 17th release of the new program that there's going to be an emphasis on biotechnology and biomanufacturing. And we would push to make sure that our type of biotechnology and our innovative way of making food, harnessing natural processes, would be included in that biotech manufacturing document and in that debate, and making sure that it includes a robust conversation about food as well. So I think I'll stop there. I have some other comments, but in general, we want to be part of the conversation. I think this is a conversation about reforming the entire value chain, the entire supply chain, and layering in new technologies and new complements to the agri-food system. And to the comments earlier by Mr. Kearns, I think there's a lot of polarization and a lot of heightened rhetoric right now. We are trying our best not to feed into that and explain that we see ourselves as an addition to the food system and not a replacement of anyone, and ask to be included in that conversation in a meaningful way.
Yeah, interesting. And I think we'll definitely dip into more about this polarization and how we can kind of bridge this, because it's obviously a key theme that's being pulled out here. Thank you very much for that. Julia, let me pass to you now. Set out your scene of your perfect. What would you like to see coming, the priorities of the next year and the beginning of the next mandate?
Hi, everyone. I'm Julia, and I work for WWF. And thanks, EIT, for inviting WWF to this event. So WWF has been working for many years now on promoting biodiversity-friendly agricultural practices. So, because agriculture is actually one of the major drivers of biodiversity loss. So I think we think that it's very important to keep working on this sector. And I think that the urgency to see some changes in environmental sustainability in the sector now is quite clear to everyone. And if we look, for example, at the last assessment that has been done on the planetary boundaries, we see that out of 9 planetary boundaries, we are crossing 6. And what does it mean? It means that we are actually operating beyond a safe space for farmers and for nature, so for everyone. And the risk of ecosystem collapse is like much higher every day. So I think we really see this urgency now, and we see the effect also of climate change directly on agriculture production. And as already been said, but also Claire and Dirk, actually, it is quite clear that the transition cannot disappear from the policy work. And I think that it has been widely recognized also by all the actors of the food supply chain. So we see food industry to increase the investment on environmental sustainability. We see international organizations calling for the need to transform a food system. International organizations like FAO and WFP that works on food security, because actually climate change is one of the main risk to food security. So I think I heard even Copa-Cogeca president acknowledging the fact that we need the Green Deal and the implementation of the Green Deal. So we have an acknowledgement of the need of the transition, and it's very good. And I think that this transition has already started. So I think we should really keep this path. And the Farm to Fork was a great start for us because it was the right approach to the food system and not only the focus on the production side. So I really hope that the next commission will keep on this food system approach. And in particular, because I think that all the actors should be involved and the burden cannot be only on the farmers to shift. So we need food processors and food retailers to be on board and to play the part. And in order to do that, I think they need much more clear signal on the direction where to go. And probably one of the priorities of the next commission should be actually having a EU common food law with some targets and quantitative targets that could set really the direction not only for farmers, but also for food processors and food retailers. And I think it should play a role like the climate law did for climate mitigation. And in order to also not only set the direction with quantitative targets, but also to unlock the investment that are needed to go there. So this is one of the priorities that we think for. And actually the second one is to change what is already in place, because the agricultural sector has already available 1/3 of the EU budget with the Common Agricultural Policy. So I think that some public funds are already there, and we need just to align them better with the Farm to Fork objectives and try to have a better performance out of them. So what we are asking, for example, is to repurpose some of the CAP distribution payments in order to have a better performance for environmental service payments, so that farmers can really be supported into the transition. And so those are our two priorities that we would like to see for the next commission.
Excellent. Thank you very much for setting that out. And last but not least, of course, let me come to you, Maya. From your perspective, maybe set the scene of maybe who Onegobio are and what it is that you are really pushing for, your priorities going into this next year.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, everyone. Okay, my mic is working. So, yeah, great to meet you all. My name is Maya Itkonen, and I'm an egg farmer, a very disruptive egg farmer. Onegobio is a company that is a spin-off from a research institute called VTT. So VTT is very old and famous research institute from Helsinki, Finland. You can probably guess that I'm from Finland. And we made a spin-off about 1.5 years ago with the technology that is really super prominent, and I have to say that it's quite an amazing technology, that it allows producing, like brewing, animal proteins like egg and dairy proteins with like really high efficiency, 10 times better efficiency than from the animals, and bringing like 90% lower environmental footprint. So that's quite a nice deal. And customers love it, because egg market is currently in a big turmoil because of the avian flu and also some other things, such as, for example, these public commitments to the cage-free, et cetera, et cetera. So I have to say that, like there are like a bunch of big food manufacturers around the world just lining up on our door that, okay, we need this product. We need to be the first one who is actually incorporating this product to our end products. It really works just like egg protein. It is directly replaceable by animal-based eggs in the recipes, and we can produce it with the price parity. Okay, cool. That's super cool. Just one problem. We have these novel food approvals. Even though this technology has been incorporated in all kinds of foods for, to say, 30 years already. We're eating it every day. We're eating everyday products that include ingredients made with this technology. Those are enzymes, such as, for example, rennet in your cheese. Those are all kinds of like flavors and colors. Lots of pharma products are made with this thing. So it's known to be safe, and it's known that it works. You just need to have access to super good technologies that actually can scale it up and really produce it with the price parity. So those are the things. Then, unfortunately, comes the question that, okay, what is the market that you need to start first? If I'm looking at the situation purely from the company perspective, it doesn't matter where you start a business. You just need to bring a lot of money to your investors so that they will be able to give you more money. We collected 50 million already from the beginning of our business, as we are now collecting more money. So we need to really start producing this thing. Unfortunately, currently, the novel food system in Europe is devastating. It is the process would be at least 6 years before I can start selling anything in here. And it's not only the length of the actual novel food process, but it's also the maturity of the technology at the moment when you're applying. So just as a difference, for example, to the US-based system at the FDA, is that in there you can basically improve the efficiency. Your system remains the same, your process remains the same, but you can tweak it so that it produces more, which is of course critical. You know, we want to produce these things in a very, very good price. But in current European system, the thing is that we can only apply when the system is absolute final and absolutely nothing can be done for that anymore. And even though on top of that, it's not transparent at all, so you would have any idea what is happening during those years that you're just waiting that your system is currently being handled. One factory is going to cost something like 200 million. So these are going to be gigantic factories that we are building. So I'm just, not from the company perspective, but purely as a taxpayer and European citizen, I'm just thinking about it. Where would I want to bring this 200 million investment? Do I want to take it to the Midwest US, or do I want to take it to my, for example, my whole country? That is a very good question. Currently, Onego Bio is fully focusing on making the business in the United States. But the technology is purely built by taxpayers' money in this amazing institute that has all the best skills in the world. And it's not just us, but also basically many other startups in the field are just licensing for the same institute, because this is really like the best knowledge in the world for this particular topic. So we are kind of like, I would say that we are a little bit like in a trap here. I just hope that my example would be seen a warning example that this is not the way we want to utilize our research resources in Europe. So what I want for the first 100 days, I just want to kind of like see some light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay.
Sorry, being a little bit direct, I just wanted to wake you up.
No, absolutely. I mean, your points there were clearly resonating with people from the audience. I can hear some ming and the ahs from the audience. So clearly your experience is resonating. And talking about the audience, I'd just like a quick reminder before we move into more discussion here, that you can, of course, put your questions to our panelists. Don't be shy. Please do that via Slido. You can also do that if you're joining us online. So if you're ming in the audience and you want to add something, please do that via Slido. Okay. Many topics touched here. Claire, I can see you're scribbling away at all these different, as always, through all the different kind of points that people are making. I think maybe it's maybe pertinent to address a bit of the elephant in the room. I know you were trying to escape the legislative bits at the beginning. Robert said, many stakeholders holding their breath right now, concern of backtracking on certain commitments. Perhaps you could start maybe with your reflections. I'm very interested to hear what you think about what we've heard from our panelists, but also on this point, is there backtracking? How do you see this? How can you communicate exactly what's going on there with these files?
Okay, sure. But before I get to that, I will come to it. I promise. I promise
Okay.
you. But I just wanted to. I realised at the beginning that I didn't say anything about the EIT colleagues, and I just want to take the opportunity, because others did it as well, to say how much we in the Commission value the work that EIT does. First of all, in terms of the outreach you have, the networks, that's really great for us. It really helps us. The inclusive way that you approach things, but also, and above all, the fact that you can be innovative and you're in the innovative space. And it's not always easy for us to do that in the Commission, but thank you for the help that you give us there in terms of really understanding what's happening on innovation and how we can bring it into the policy frameworks and legislation. So I'll come to that point, which is, I think, as we've all been saying, sustainability has not gone away. We've still got work to do, and I think what Ursula von der Leyen said was, and we're not shirking our responsibilities, we will do this, we are not lowering the level of ambition, but obviously the politicians have to decide a little bit when it's wise to do things and not, no? You referred, Robert, to the fact that there's been a lot of polarization in the politics at the moment, no? There is also the fact that we're on a very short time frame, as we talked about before, in terms of what we can still get through in this Council and Parliament. So I think, in a way, necessity has to be the better part of valor as well. If I look at it both from the political point of view, but also from the more technical point of view, which is, is it a good moment to push through big proposals onto the table when you know that there isn't the bandwidth in political terms to look at them, and there isn't probably the right climate to have a constructive discussion around them? Now, that's just my half penny on this, if you like, but I understand the point that you're making, which is we do need to try and communicate better around that, so that there is a better understanding of why certain choices have been made. No? So our job is also to try and construct the dots. So we are still working on a framework. It is on a systems-based approach, which is very much the way that Farm to Fork looks at it. And is it an executive vice president? You've also talked about a DG Food. I don't know how we keep that overarching perspective, but we really are very much attached to that. So that has not gone away. And the framework itself, we've had lots of very interesting input from the stakeholders on it. I see that Julia is already rebranding it from the FSFS, which was probably, if I can say it,
bit of a mouthful.
A bit of a mouthful. That's very diplomatic. No? That was a bit of a mouthful. No? So you were talking about we need a common food law, but I think we're all agreed that we can't go away from this systemic approach. No? So we need to keep working now to see what the best way of doing that is in the next few years. I think, should I stop there for now? Yeah, because I've got other,
more
maybe I wanted to, Robert talked about the biotech initiative, which von der Leyen talked about as well in September, which I think is very important. It's going to come in the first quarter of next year. It's early days in the sense that we're working, hopefully, in a way where everybody's joined up within the Commission, because there are lots of different interests to take account there, but and also looking at the fundamentals of the regulatory approach. No? How do we do these things? Do we need to look more at what's happening elsewhere and adapt a bit? I think these are important questions. Maybe we can come back to the point that Robert put as well about how do we position ourselves in biotech and innovation in food? Because I think there is the point of we have to say that we're supplementary, complementary, because how do you get into the ecosystem and the ecosystem not resist you? No, that's one important thing. But then I think the other issue behind it is, in biotech, there are the questions about technology and how you harness it for the good and get the balance between innovation and regulation and safety. But there are also all the ethical issues around it. And that is what is causing us a problem in Europe, I think, because there are the different cultural approaches to it. But we can't just stick our heads in the sand. And I think we need to think about, maybe this is the time to do it, how to approach that better in terms of communication, be it from business, but also be it from civil society, because civil society very often talks to consumers in ways that us in the institutions or business can't do. So how do we do that collectively, whilst at the same time having different interests? Julia, I understand that now. But maybe I can come back to the novel foods regulation in the next
round.
In the next round,
yeah. Yeah, okay.
I don't want to bite off more than I can chew in one go.
Well, we are covering a lot of ground, obviously, here. I am very interested to pick up on this idea of communication, and we've already mentioned polarization, right? And we were speaking about von der Leyen's State of the Union speech. We're talking about the strategic dialogue that we're moving into. I'm curious to hear from our panelists how you see that we can bridge this gap more across this polarization that we're seeing. Claire mentioned it, we've mentioned it in a few different sessions. Perhaps, I don't know who wants to come in on this, but I'd be curious to hear from all your perspectives, really. But perhaps I'll start with you, Robert, because I know there's also been there's been this push from the right, from the political situation, the environment that we've seen, that have also been pushing back against maybe alternative proteins or cultured meat. I'm curious how you see how to bridge that divide, how to bridge that gap, and how we bring stakeholders closer together to have this discussion. Perhaps I'll go to Robert first, and I'll move to other panelists.
Yeah, thank you for that. First, I think it's worth the context of saying I come from an animal agriculture family. My father-in-law is a large cattle rancher in Texas. I'm also a classically trained chef, so I've operated both ends of this value chain. And I have to say that, number one, farmers have to be at the center of the transition. That's absolutely critical. And they are the original entrepreneurs. They've done everything we asked them to do to feed a growing planet. And so I think it's incumbent upon us that are quote unquote disruptors to first be very careful about how we talk about what we are trying to disrupt. At the end of the day, we're trying to disrupt food insecurity and the climate crisis, not the producers of conventional agriculture. So as we, the startup community, are trying to raise money from investors and raise excitement, I think we have to be very careful about how we talk about what we're doing. So I take responsibility for that. But we also need leaders who are making decisions in public policy to help discern who is a vocal minority and what the overall representative opinion is about food systems change and systems level change, and help facilitate some of this dialogue between constructive voices, both in new and old agriculture. We need help in that regard, and I think EIT is a great example of an entity that's trying to help do that and bridge divide and bring people together. In terms of my particular technology, and then we'll talk, or our technology, at the end of the day, we are part of the system and what we're doing, because all of the nutrients that we feed our cells in order to make animal protein come from plant-based crops, right? We can't do what we're going to do and be a complementary animal protein in the world without arable farmers growing the crops that we need to turn into the nutrients. So there is an incredible symbiosis between what we're doing and farmers in Europe and farmers around the world. And also, I think you will hear most of the folks who are doing what we're doing and focusing on complementary proteins, that we need a tremendous amount more of regenerative agriculture in Europe and around the world. And that is going to be a critical part of the solutions mix. But regenerative agriculture alone, you can't get there and feed a growing meat-hungry planet, especially because you'll need more land and you'll have lower yields. But that's where a technology like ours is a perfect complement, because we can produce protein in an intensive way with about 95% less land, 78% less water, and a lower carbon footprint. So these pieces fit together very well. And we need a constructive dialogue to communicate that to farmers, to make sure that they understand how we can work together and what this future looks like together.
Monica, I can see that you want to come in on this point. I thought you might want to come in when we mentioned regenerative agriculture. I know you're doing a lot of work there, talking about how to create this constructive dialogue with farmers and also how to push regenerative agriculture, in the future, how to scale this up. Your thoughts on this?
Yes, I want to build on what Robert you said as well. We are living a very particular moment. So it's only a couple of months ago, this summer, we have suffered tremendous impact from the climate change in Europe. So just, you know that I come from Spain. There were months without a single drop of water. And now we are suffering from flooding, so it's tremendous. And this is the farmers' take on this. So, building on what you said, I think that in our view, the farmer needs concrete advice on what to do, because he or she, they are asked for many demands, different demands. So they are asked to change. They are blamed of what they have been doing in the conventional or traditional farming, and they don't have clarity on what the expectations will be. So we have, this is a collective effort from the private and the public sector in our view, that is to bring together what are the main targets and the achievements that can be feasible, that can be put in practice, that will bring I would say, strong impact that then is visible for them as well. For that, they need incentives as well. They need clarity on the messages, clarity on the expectations, full involvement from the private sector, involving the whole value chain, but also the public sector as well. And as I said, on the carrot and the sticks, they need carrot as well, because farmer today is confused. So it's confused. Regenerative agriculture, what I personally like from regenerative agriculture, that is flexible and can be adapted to any farm condition. So it's not very strict, but it's clear, as long there is no firm definition yet, but at least there is clarity on the outcomes, that is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, okay, there's clarity on this. To improve soil health, clear, because the soil is the interface and the uptake of nutrients. The improving the biodiversity in the soil as well, that will also enhance and will unlock the nutrients in the soil, and also will provide more resilience to the plants towards drought, for instance. And so these kind of things that our farmers need and are understood by everyone. So, and we all in this value and just in this stage can collaborate and support in achieving that and providing the farmer with digital tools as well. So it's amazing the number of decisions that the farmer has to take all along the year. Amazing, the number. So how can we help them out to decide the good things, or the things that are more, decisions that are more appropriate to their his challenges on this. And they are managing a tremendous amount of data, but now technology allows this and tracks. And also what they need also to be able to prove that what they are doing and the changes that they are implementing in the field are certified or monitored in a way, and he can prove what he has been able to achieve with his yields.
Very interesting point you're raising also about the crises that we're facing. Also, Claire was mentioning this as well. Julia, I'd be interested to come to you to hear your thoughts on, of course, facing these biodiversity, these environmental crises, and we're facing more and more, and we will, you could argue that it's not just that we're having crisis after crisis, we're kind of in a perma-crisis situation here. And, you were very much focusing on this holistic approach. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on, how can legislators best steer legislation through these crises and not be, put off course throughout these environmental crises? How can they stay on course? Your thoughts there, and also on the point that I was raising before about how you can bridge this gap with the strategic dialogue. I think it's very interesting to bring the NGO perspective in also on that.
Thanks. So on the first part of your question is I think that actually the reaction that we had, especially on the agricultural sector from the policymaker, was more on a crisis emergency mode, and we think that we really need to change the approach and try to think about long-term resilience of the agricultural system. And I think that one of the instruments that we should use to increase this resilience is also what's already mentioned is already the budget that is available for the public subsidies. So I think we should start to repurposing those subsidies also to create more resilience into the agricultural system. And one way for that is that, for example, increasing incentives and payment for environmental services that can bring more resilience to the agricultural field. And I think that bringing incentives more than, for example, conditionalities will really help also decrease the administrative burden of the farmers, and also decrease the polarization that the farmers, because they feel to be controlled. They do not like to be told what to do on the field. So I think that unlocking the incentives from the CIP towards payment that work better for rewarding farmer for their effort on bringing biodiversity back and bringing organic topsoil back. I think they really need a best reward for that. And one of the way is that to rethink the balance of the CIP currently. So, for example, thinking how much is going in what we call the first pillar, so the direct payment part, and that has been proven also from a recent report of the OECD that it's not the most efficient way to use actually public money and public subsidies. So this is something that we should, I think about. And in terms of yeah, we are a conservation NGOs, and I think that it was explicitly mentioned by the President von der Leyen, saying that we need to depolarize the dialogue between conservationists and farmers. But I think that what is clear is that also farmers need biodiversity and ecosystem services, and I think they are very much they know it very well, and the problem is that to show that they can be rewarded for what they're doing, and for example, one element could be also the monitoring. So the monitoring on what they are of the practices they are applying on the field can not only help to show the results, but also give a feedback to them. So it's just, look what I am doing, and it's like I'm bringing back biodiversity on my land. And I think it is something that we should not punish them for not doing that, but reward them for applying something and bringing back biodiversity and resilience. So,
Maya, I see you're wanting to jump in on this point.
I actually have a comment, like a short comment that is for both of these approaches. So then again, like bring the cost and the price to the game. So that is going to be the best reward that, okay, produce less, you get better price for that, produce it better for the environment, better for the employees, better for your own life, etc. So just make sure that the farmers can get like off some pressure with the help of these new technologies, that the bulk proteins can be produced with another way, and you produce something that is super good quality, you get super good price for that, everybody is going to be happy for that.
And that actually ties me quite nicely, actually, into my next point, because we've talked a lot about the farm side of the farm to fork, and I'd like to maybe turn more to the fork side, shall we say? Yeah. And so, Dirk, I'd like to bring you in here. I mean, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on. I mean, I think it was Julia that said about how food retailers and processors need a clearer signal of where to go. I'm also curious about this idea that you raised, this executive vice president for food. How do you think that could help steer the course for the future legislation? Why is that something that you think could be helpful from your perspective? I'm curious to kind of draw out a few more thoughts on that point. Oh, sorry. Yes, your microphone. Okay. Yes.
No, I think on the first point, what has been missing a little bit, and that comes back to the point that was made just now, is a bit of more market orientation in the rollout of the Green Deal and the Farm to Fork strategy. So we do need to match demand with supply, and we need to make sure that across the chain there is a good return on the investments that are inevitable for the transition to sustainability. So if farmers are not doing well, the entire chain is not doing well. If processors are not doing well, the entire chain is not doing well, because you get all of this. And there's enormous pressure in food production right now from a cost point of view. You've seen how we're still grappling with food inflation, how it's very difficult to keep food affordable while the price or the cost of production is going up so much. So I think in that kind of context, I'm quite excited about this strategic dialogue for the future of agriculture. I think it's a missed opportunity to call it a dialogue on the future of agriculture. It should be a dialogue on food systems, because you can't have the Farm to Fork and the Green Deal on the one hand and just focus on agriculture only. I think that's really something that needs to be clarified. But it's also time for a new social contract between public authorities, between private sector, between other stakeholders that have to deliver on the sustainability transition in the food sector. And I think this strategic dialogue provides that opportunity. We have been very much we have been very reactive, let's say, as the stakeholder community to the proposals that have come out of the European Commission. And I think now we've seen all those proposals, we've done the targets, and we've aligned to the extent possible to that. But we now need to look at what is the common vision in terms of the investments that are needed, how are we going to plan and sequence this all out, and this is something that is missing. The fact that we do not really have common understanding of what we mean by food sustainability or sustainable food systems and resilient food systems. That's still hampering in a way, and the fact that we don't have indicators to really see what is the direction that we're going towards. So there's a need to have that kind of conversation. How does an EVP for food come in? This is, of course, high on our wish list, because we think that food has, like in the priorities of the EU institutions, is low on the list. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the crisis that we've had over the last couple of years, it's always food that has been very sort of central in all of that. When we were faced with the COVID pandemic, we had to quickly install green lanes to make sure that ingredients and people and packaging, etc., could travel across borders. When the war in Ukraine started, we were like, oh my God, we don't have sunflower oil from Ukraine anymore. Where are we going to source from now? When the energy crisis started, we were like, oh, we're actually way too dependent on fossil fuels coming from a few countries that we don't really like to do business with. How are we going to go about that? So food has always been very central. And actually, food is also a strategic asset of the EU, because we are the largest exporter of food in the world. We are standard setters when it comes to food internationally. So I think we should, I think in the organizational setup of the Commission, there is also a need to put food higher on that agenda and really see it as a strategic value chain that needs to be supported, and that comes to the carrots. But where we also need to have more collaboration across the chain, and that's also something that I take responsibility of together with the other colleagues here, to see what is the business model for this, for managing this transition, so that it is not only the farmers that need to pay their share, but also not, and that's where maybe I disagree with the lady from WWF, where everything is put on the middle part of the chain, because eventually in an economic world, this will be passed on, and this will find its way to the consumers. So how can we work it out in such a way that benefits all, benefits society? That's I think now the moment that we have. So let's hope that this strategic dialogue is not going to be just a tick-the-box exercise for Madame von der Leyen to be re-elected, but that it is really something that we take forward in the next Commission mandate.
Yeah, it's a good point how to make this not just a tick-box exercise, but actually something constructive and something to create for the future. Maya, let me come to you now. I mean, Claire did also mention she was happy to talk about novel foods, biotechnology, all of this element. You know, in your first your intervention, you know, clearly there was a lot of frustration around this regulation, and I'm curious from you how you think, you know, legislators can be closer to your voice and understand better. You know, how can we have the better communication between the two about what needs to be done? Maybe you have any reflections there on that point from your side, from your experience, maybe in dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, a lot is happening, of course, all the time, and that is great. I mean, people like Robert are putting a lot of effort in that, and let's not forget that, you know, everything is started with good intentions. That's always the thing, that, you know, like, let's try to prevent these GM products coming to Europe, and let's try to prevent these whatever melamine baby formulas that have been problems. There are good intentions, but quite often what happens is that it just like you just kind of like throw away the baby with the washing water. So it needs to be looked again when things changed, and that is the thing, that this dynamic approach absolutely has to be there. Otherwise, we're just stuck with the past, and when technologies bring new opportunities, we are not necessarily ready to take them if we are like too stuck. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot happening already, and I think that even just kind of like taking those things on the plate and seeing that, you know, these exist and we need to really handle this with one way or another could be a great way forward. We have all the tools already at hand. It's really not that, in a way, it's not that big of a deal. We just need to kind of like face the reality.
Mm-hmm. And I do want to bring in some questions from the audience. Don't be shy if you do have questions. Please put them to our panelists. But let me turn to you now, Claire. Obviously, you've heard again another round from our panelists. Curious to hear your reflections and thoughts, and looking to the future, how you see this strategic dialogue shaping the future direction of the food sector, and also pulling on this point about that you said, and I mentioned to Julia. We are facing crises more and more. How can legislation stay the course and still keep this long-term vision while also dealing with these crises? I'm curious to hear your thoughts and reflections there.
The questions are just getting bigger and bigger.
Bigger
now,
and
as
bigger.
you go on, Natasha. I mean, it's not getting any easier.
What's the meaning
but
of life,
maybe,
Claire?
Yeah, what's the meaning of life, exactly. No, but maybe three things quickly. I think, yes, you're right about and others as well, the constant crises. But the short-term problems that we had, actually, the tools that we got already, like the crisis mechanism and so on, we managed to solve them, no? I mean, as I say, we've done quite well in that respect. So I think the fundamentals, and maybe this is what Maya's saying as well, the fundamentals are there. But we do, I think, need to change things for this medium to long-term challenge that we've got, that Julia is talking about now, in terms of the resistance of the system in the medium to long term. I would like, before I come to the strategic dialogue, I would like to say, to go back to Maya's point about the novel foods regulation, because I fully get what you're saying about the fact that we need to, in Europe, really think about how we get from what happens in the laboratories, the research work and so on, to getting the products to market. I think Robert was saying the same thing now. And I fully understand as well that if our system doesn't work better, then businesses will decide to invest elsewhere. And that's what we're conscious of, and that's why Ursula von der Leyen, I think, said, we need to look at this in a strategic way, certainly as far as biotech's concerned. So I think, we get that. The question is then how in practice we do the things that good regulation needs to do, which is a balance between innovation and the safety. And maybe we do need to think a little bit about how we've done that and whether we don't need to look at the paradigm again. Then there's the certainty and the transparency. There I would contest a little bit what you say, because I see it very often from the other end of the EFSA process, which is that process has to be credible, the scientists have to do their work. Now, I'm also frustrated, as you are, that sometimes it takes a long time for that to happen, no? So I think we need to work on, and we're discussing with the colleagues in EFSA, how to do that in terms of making sure that we have a very credible, science-based process, but that we do it in a way which is, I think we can make improvements around that. It won't be a revolution, but it might be a bit of evolution in terms of the way that works. And of course, we understand that the business timeline is important. But when you said is there light at the end of the tunnel, I would say, yes, there is light at the end of the tunnel. Because there has to be, and also because, whilst we have not made the proposal on the FSFS or the Common Food Law yet, what we have done is made what I consider to be a very positive proposal on the new breeding techniques, which really we have done. I know it's controversial, but we've tried to say, look, this biologically is different from a GMO, and we need a system which fits proportionately for the risk assessment. We've done it not in the same way that others have done it. We look very closely and we try to see what were the good elements of what they've done. But we can't just say we have no risk assessment, we just go ahead with these things. We've said, look, there needs to be an assessment on the nature of the new technique. Is it something which can be produced according to conventional agriculture, in which case we put it in a category which gets fast-tracked, and if not, then it has to go to something which is much more similar. And we tried to set a balance there between what goes into which category. So I think that shows that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe how far we get through the process and how long it takes us will tell us, just how far down the tunnel it's going to be till we get to the light. But anyway, I think there's definitely light. On the strategic dialogue for agriculture, yes, maybe it would have been better to have a broader formulation. I don't know, but I think that tells us that this is also going to look at the next CAP. You've made some very valid comments, I think, about the incentives for farmers and how they can be better programmed. I've seen some good examples of that over the last few months, visiting countries like Slovenia, like Estonia, about how they're actually sort of building the incentives much more into the way that the CAP works through the eco schemes. But that certainly needs to be built on, so that needs to be discussed there. Obviously, we're not going to reinvent the wheel, and neither are we going to run down the mountain. If I think we're halfway up, because I'm an optimistic kind of person, no, you might say we're only a quarter of the way up. We've got to build on what's there. No, we've got to build on that. But I very much welcome what you're saying about let's have a new deal. No, let's have a new social contract around it. We had tried very much on the code of conduct to say, business, please take your responsibility. So I'm very happy to hear that you want to do that. Huh? But also this strategic dialogue forum is not the only place where the discussion's going to happen. No, I mean, it has to be happening in the other fora that we have elsewhere so that we pull it all together then and see what this, the next commission and the next parliament, the next council, but also all the stakeholders want to do for the next 5 years. Huh?
I'm liking all of these kind of mountain analogies.
Yeah,
I hope that you're all, you're all like hiking.
I'm going out to buy my new boots soon.
Right,
in terms of,
everyone needs to get equipped. Okay, excellent. Well, this is a nice kind of positive note to close the kind of discussion, but I'd like to move to questions from the audience. I do have one here. We have a little bit of time to play with, so I'm going to try and squeeze as many as I can. We have one here specifically on plant-based protein production, so I think I will be going to you about protein production. This is from Dorothea Carlo. She'd like to know what could Europe do to incentivize intra-EU plant-based protein production? Perhaps you have thoughts. I think I'll come to you first, Robert, but then maybe Claire, if there's anything you'd like to add there. Yeah.
Well, I would pose the caveat we're focused on producing animal-based products, so but we obviously are also looking at how this fits into the overall protein system and innovative products, including plant-based products. I think the Commission is going to be looking at an EU-wide protein strategy soon, and I think that's an incredible opportunity for us to look at what crops we're incentivizing to grow, both structural things like the CAP, and then non-structural incentives, to make sure that we are creating the crops that are needed for these new innovative plant-based products without also feeding into a monocrop culture or feeding into the importation of crops from problematic areas, using the Amazon as an example. I think the EU protein strategy needs to be really front and center for the Commission. The Parliament has spoken a little bit about this of recent, but I think there's a lot of opportunity to make sure that we are incentivizing the right inputs to go into the new types of plant-based products that I think will help encourage the quote-unquote flexitarian to reduce their meat consumption a little bit, even if it's a meal a week, 2 meals a week. But in order to do that, you're going to have to create analogs that truly are convincing and have the sensory experience that somebody wants that loves meat. And so there's a lot of work to do there, but it needs to be incentivized.
Would anybody like to comment on this point, or should I move to another question?
Can I just ask how to incentivize it, in your view? I mean, obviously, we're working on this protein strategy at the moment. As you say, the Parliament's been pushing hard. But, I mean, and I don't know, maybe Maya has something she wants to add on that as well. No, but what incentives? How do we do it?
Yeah. I would use a Dutch example here. When the EU, when the Commission called for member state national protein strategies to be produced, the Dutch submitted their very first one and focused on cultivated meat, insect proteins, but also lots of R&D and experimentation on what types of soy could be grown in the Netherlands in order to reduce imports from Brazil. I think, and that the research is ongoing right now. I think we need to really lean in on what are diverse crops that we can grow here that we've gotten in the habit of importing because it's easy. And that needs to be subsidized and be structured in public research and development. So.
I see.
Maybe
Julia
I can
nodding, 'cause a couple of people,
to add on how to incentivize the production of a plant-based protein. Probably also working on the consumption side will be an option. So the food environments that you mentioned before at the beginning, and also maybe going back to the targets I was mentioning before, maybe one target on consumption to rebalance the animal protein consumption compared to the plant protein consumption can also be a way to have at least an objective to reach and to drive consumption in a way, and to see also retailers participating towards these objectives. So.
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay, you wanted to come in on
I'm
this.
not specialist in protein in meat, but I am in crop production, and the protein starts by as you said, also in the protein content in the crops. We have seen the last years in Europe that the protein content of grains and soy have been substantially reduced. Our interpretation of that has to do with the affordability for crop nutrition from the farmers, so that they go for the cheapest sources of fertilizers, that its quality is poor, and then we see that the protein content, especially in countries like France, that was very high protein content in the grains in the past, and now they have a problem. So not only for those grains that are to feed the cattle, but also for bread production, for instance. So it has to do with the quality of the fertilizers and the balanced nutrition that is being applied in the soil, and has to do with the affordability from the farmers.
Okay, well, unfortunately, I think we have kind of come to the end of our time, which I could keep talking about this, I think, quite easily for maybe another hour or two, but unfortunately, we have to bring this to a close. So I would like to thank all of you, all of our panelists. Thank you to all of our speakers today. Perhaps a round of applause for our speakers today.